Now, all right, everyone, this will be the after chapter discussion for 8.51D. My name's Dado. I will be running the current after chapter discussion. Oshi's here, but they'll be also doing some other stuff, so they'll be in and out. But yeah, we'll start with the summary for this chapter. So, first thing we have is we have an opening with Geneva. So we see her. Geneva has been working, or kind of been kidnapped by the Selphid, the mines. Specifically, the third mine is the one who's currently with Geneva, and they are forcing Geneva against her will to work with them, and Geneva is unable to resist. We get a look at the magical muscles of the Dolahans, called the Gallus muscle, which explains how they are able to separate certain body parts. Geneva, while continuing to learn about these muscles and other things, becomes trapped within another Selphid's life experience, and the memories that they experienced when they weren't a part of the mind. We then switch over to Idis, if that's how you say their name, their POV, and some other of the Selphid guards laying about. The guards are called to remove Geneva from the third mine due to her being sucked into one of the other Selphids and basically being unable to get out. It's revealed that the mines can perform telekinesis, which shows an aspect of psionics. We see Geneva go back to her room and upset at her situation. Idis is running out of reasons to defend her own leaders. We go to Ken, who we haven't seen in a while, with the UN. He is trying to diplomatically negotiate the assistance of retrieving Geneva from the bodies of Feldon, which is the Selphid company with the mines. He is currently meeting with the second of Arma Zentel, who is from the Torum Legion, one of the Dolahan companies. Ken is unable to convince Zentel due to the fact that there's not enough current evidence or solid evidence that the bodies of Feldon are actually behind it. And we also see a bit where Zentel mistakes Ken for being Drathian when Ken speaks some Japanese and greets him back in Chinese, which is kind of a tidbit into how Drath and how they might have influence from Earth. We see a POV from Paige at the UN, their black powder engineer, both with Luan and Geneva out. It seems like there's a bit of a lack of leadership. Paige says that they're doing fine though. Some of the Earthers are talking about leaving to go into other places, possibly trying to go to Windstrom, Israel, and some other places. Paige says that's not a good idea because they're still doing research into whether or not those places are actually safe. At the very end of that part, we see where Paige has actually been building weapons. It seems like with black powder, which is something that Geneva was very against, but Paige sees that might be needed in the future. We go over to the leadership of the Forgotten Wings Company, who without Nears is being pushed and struggling against other companies. Foliana is currently in charge with Perorn kind of taking things over. Perorn keeps trying to get advice from Foliana, but Foliana doesn't really seem to care for strategy, and she eventually tells them that she is not a strategist. They should make plans because plans are good, and that usually works, and that she does not care, and that her job, she is waiting for the enemies to reveal themselves, and she will let the strategists make the plans, and until they get a name, they should leave her out of things. We see a bit where Idris is struggling with her own emotions over protecting Geneva. She spars with Guardian Resic, who is apparently a very strong and high-up representative of the mines. But we don't get too much info on him at the time. We switch back to Geneva, who is being escorted to the mine, but not the third mine who she's been working with. It's revealed that she's actually going to the second mine. We find out that the second mine is nothing like the third mine, who is more clinical and not very caring of Geneva's wishes, but instead the second mine is a lot more empathetic, and it's revealed that the second mine is made up of travelers And people, Selphids who left the Balaros and have a lot more other perspective on life than some of the other minds. They are very open to other ideas. The second mind is very generous and does not probe or force Geneva like the other. The second mind offers a way of assisting Geneva to defend against the third. Geneva, out of her own will, decides to hear the second out. We then cut to Yasai, a river city in Balaros, where a bunch of people, mainly lizard folk, are competing to find a pure water pearl for Sitik the Setter, a famous jeweler who is creating a relic and needs a replacement pearl. The person to deliver the pearl first gets the first bid on the relic, which means that a lot of the companies are sponsoring people to find and deliver the relic, and that they will get the first bid of whoever gets there first and for the sponsor. We see a courier called the Wave Runner, who is the courier that will be delivering the pearl. Maelstrom Howling, one of the companies, finds the pearl first and brings it to the courier. The courier actually denies Maelstrom, saying that they have been pre-booked by the Vanguard, and Maelstrom Howling, there's no other couriers available, so they are very desperate to try and get this pearl. Within a few moments later, someone else finds another pearl, and it's given to the Vanguard. Then, all of a sudden, Luan steps out after, I believe he was eating, and Luan offers to deliver the pearl on the behalf for Maelstrom Howling. So, everybody seems a bit underestimating him, and for good reason, because technically he is a city runner. After some negotiation, Maelstrom agrees to let Luan take the job. Luan also still has some of the Fraerlings with him, a team of 4. The Wave Runner, not really believing that Luan will be able to keep up with him, he makes it a formal and polite competition to get to the jeweler first. So they get in the water, and Luan, within quick time, very fast, takes the lead with his enchanted skull, which has been enchanted by the Fraerlings. We get to see many different quick POVs from watchers for the Windstrom broadcast, including the UN, Drossi, the Earthers of Rear, and Grimalkin. While Luan is competing and making his way to the city, Iron Vanguard attempts to stop him, more specifically Xol, who had a bounty on Luan, and also was one of the people that Luan, I believe, thwarted his plans in Daquin, when Luan was doing a run there. Luan basically jumps over the ships with one of his skills, and we see Luan, and he eventually evades the capture. They make it close to the city, and the Wave Runner is now very confident, even though Luan's ahead of him. The jeweler's shop is in the center of the city, and the city, and how should I say this? Luan, because he's using an enchanted skull, can't really make it to the city, supposedly, because it's land. And so the Wave Runner believes that he has this. Luan, desperate to make the run, instead just takes the skull onto land, which made for a pretty funny moment, and ends up making the delivery, while also destroying the jeweler's shop. After the job, it is shown Luan is now a courier, and has the title Luan the Olympian. We see a Tier 4 reunion between the UN and Luan. We see from afar that Pelsier is watching, who has suspects over Luan and his recent disappearance, and trying to figure out where he got the enchanted skull. We go back to the Fraerlings, who have now split up from Luan. One of them, Talgard Khatun, makes an independent decision and goes to scout on his own, asking they don't make contact with him. We finally go back to Geneva with the third mind, who, after leaving the second mind, the third mind is very anxious to see what the second mind did to him, There's a back and forth between Geneva and the third, which leads to them being forceful. The third mind pushes into Geneva's mind and finds a door, which reveals Rick Astley in his legendary glory, singing Never Gonna Give You Up. The third mind is confused and begins to open more doors, with each finding a different and repeating meme. Geneva has used earthworms and memes to combat the mind as it frantically tries to comprehend what is going on. The third mind eventually gets a hold of itself and clears away all the mimetic influences. Geneva warns them that she will not be a puppet and that they do not wish to harm the mind. The third mind then casts an appraisal spell equivalent and learns that Geneva was given the telepath class by the second. Which is horrifying to a lot of the mind and some of the other Selphids, as this is not supposed to be that it's something that is given out to outsiders. It is revealed that the psionic related classes are a big secret, and that Resic is not just a guardian, but a psychic guardian. The third, enraged, puts its force towards opening the last door in Geneva's mind, and Geneva warns it to stop. The mind ignores her, and upon opening the door, freezes. Geneva has written the text, "The gods are alive," in the room. This causes agony and shock for the third by simply observing this. The mental defense is a success and leads to Geneva negotiating with the other minds, or all of the minds, who she gives conditions to for her cooperation. We go to the students of Niers, who are in the port that Luan and the UN are in. They watch the competition and they wish to talk to the UN representatives. They are suddenly confronted by Cotton, the tall guard, who requests aid from the Forgotten Wings Company. Lastly, then we get back to the Forgotten Wings with Perorn, and she rushes to one of the meeting rooms where she finds Foliana with multiple Fraerling leaders who all request aid from the Forgotten Wings Company. It ends with Foliana seeing this revelation of attacks to be leading towards the trap as it reveals itself. And that is the summary. I know that was a lot, but there was a lot of POV changes, so there was a lot to cover. For first impressions now, so my first impressions were, I think this was a really funny chapter, most obviously with Rick Astley and references to a bunch of memes. I wanted to see, I loved seeing Geneva and the fact that we got to see covers of telepaths and psychics. The only thing closest that we've seen so far in regards to telepathy is with the ants. Oh, hold on, Oshi, did you want to say something?
Yeah, did you mention how we're gonna run the chat a little bit? Okay, I stopped editing. So guys, if you want to speak up, if you want to add to the first impressions or any kind of questions or anything, use the reactions and comments section. You want to ping Dado or me, we'll make an order and we'll let everybody get a chance to speak.
Yeah, so just if you want to react, if you want to say what you want to say, just at one of us. And then if you don't want to say anything, but you want to propose a question, just at one of us and then put what you want said, like a question or a statement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I get my first impression, or are you still going?
The last thing I was gonna say is, I know a pirate has some knowledge of the SCP universe, and I don't know if it's just because language, but I saw them at one point write mematics, and I was kind of wondering, I don't know, it reminded me a lot of SCP, and I thought that was funny. That's it.
I think that's probably what the reference was to.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna give you guys my first. It was the general consensus from everyone, and for me especially. It was a good chapter. It wasn't. I think it served its purpose. There's gonna be. I know people are gonna say this, and I'm gonna say it before they can because I went first. Nah. The chapter could have been more impactful if it had been broken up. If there had been one chapter that discussed the UN and the Fraerlings and the drama with with Niers' company with the Forgotten Wings, and one that dealt exclusively more with Geneva and her experiences with the mines, we would have gotten a lot more world building, and we probably would have gotten more of an emotional impact. But combining the two is just a consequence of the structure of Volume 8. Pirateaba did talk about that in the acid post that they did this morning. I think the after chat, if anybody got a chance to leak that to everybody else. If you haven't, somebody go copy it for folks to read.
I got it.
Yeah,
Acid leaks are not terribly
are
common.
traditional. Okay, they're traditional.
The pole acid leaks are traditional. Everything else is
Oh,
whoever
it
deigns
just
to speak about it if it's
Shut up.
relevant.
yeah,
Well, and
something.
keep in mind too that this particular after chapter thought just talks about Dragon Ball Z, so it's
Well, yeah.
not really as great.
I wasn't. Yeah, that's why I was okay. So it was just a choice on their part, and it's clearly a partly because of the narrative, partly because of their schedule that they're doing it this way. I can't say that I hate it. I mean, it served its purpose. It was fun. Um, and of course there was lots of Fraerlings and not enough naked Luan, and I made a request, and my request was not honored by pirateaba, and I have been betrayed. That's it.
There was a clear description of what he was wearing as he was sculling. So
That
I
was
think that's
not
the
my
best you can get.
request.
No,
That,
I think that's the closest you can get to your request.
that was not my
That,
request. I
that's
have been
fine.
betrayed.
PK will make art of it, probably. Alright.
Mr. Europe had something to go,
Yep.
and Dragonus, if you want to, just said, I think it works better as one chapter. Now, we'll let Dragonus respond to why he thinks, and then we'll let Mr. Europe go right afterwards. Dragonus, speak up.
Oh, having it as one chapter keeps the pacing across both of them moving faster. I think that we got a lot of really awesome deep world building across what we got, and it helped to keep swapping back and forth between the points of view to keep sort of pulling us forward and not dwelling on the massive amount of lore bombs this chapter was dropping every other paragraph, it felt like.
I don't have a response to that right now because I'm still thinking about the recording. Mr. Europe, you get to go.
Yeah, I kind of agree with what Dragna said. It would have been different if it was if the Selphid arc was shorter, but it seems like Geneva is going to stick around there for a while. So I think it's not much of a problem. They can be spread out over a long period of time. I do have to ask, sorry, my audio cut out for for a short while. But I do have to double check. Did you guys skip the Jungle Tale section again?
No, I mentioned that a bit where Pelclear was observing them from afar at the docks.
Oh, okay, good. Just my audio cut out for a second.
Oh no, go. Sorry.
I just want to because I really liked how they're setting that whole thing up, and it seems like how how they're setting them up as the bad guys for the UN. Now that it doesn't really make sense for the UN to go in and rescue Geneva right now.
Yeah.
Anyone else got first impression they want to share?
I wanted to respond to the thing about the structure. So, I mean, I do think it works really well as one chapter, but I don't know. For me, because it was such two big events happening, there was on one hand we had Luan and the competition between him and the Wave Runner, and then we also had Geneva. Like, they didn't clash, but it felt like I had to prep myself. I'm like, all right, this is happening in Geneva. And I'm like, oh, I have to go back to Luan. And I had to keep going back and forth. And they were both really amazing parts. It was just, it, it was weird having them both in the same chapter to me. And that's not like a bad thing. It was just I had to prepare myself differently every time I had to go back to switch to the other POV.
Okay, Lynette's got an impression, and I believe Kermit's typing, and I'm like waiting with bated breath. Go ahead, Lynette.
Go, Lynette.
Okay, so my impression, I want to remind everybody, you remember in most of the previous volumes we've had entire arcs that just dealt with one point of view for 3 or 4 chapters in a row. Pirate, I think, is doing something a little bit different for Volume 8, and they are more thematically grouping things together. And I was watching all of the different points of view for this and thinking about what theme Pirate was trying to put all of this umbrella under, other than happenings. And the only thing I can come up with is these are people who saved themselves. You've got Luan, who won his race, and you've got Geneva, who was able to defend herself and then manipulate the minds into renegotiating for her assistance. I think this is. They didn't need the main characters to come and do this. They managed it on their own, and I think that's the main impression I'm getting off of this. I don't really know how the Fraerlings tie into that, but that's what I've got.
I do.
Oh, shush. You got opinions on everything, honey.
Okay.
So,
All right.
Kermit responds.
I got
Yeah,
it.
you go ahead.
So Action Kermit says, I think the minds trying to make Geneva part of their telepathic collective could have serious downsides because it adds her knowledge to an existing conceptual framework. In science, we have a saying that scientific knowledge advances one retirement at a time as new researchers bring new perspectives and the respected old guards hand it off to them. But the minds have continuity and uniformity, which makes it hard to do paradigm shifts. I can agree with that, but at the same time, they are still bringing in new people. Like that's kind of like the point is that they get new people brought into the minds as get accepted, and I'm sure that there is some aspect where they're kind of staying the same, but it seems like they're also getting new things, and they are taking a lot of Geneva's knowledge and making it. They have projects for it, which in it itself is kind of bad. I think that the Selphids themselves, like the minds, are actually now. If we made a top 5 list of who was the most dangerous for the Earthers, I would probably put the Selphids in there now.
Okay.
As like groups.
Yeah. So let me clarify, Kermit, because I'm trying to understand and parse what he said. So, Dragonus, please don't use that chat for like conversation. Use a general one. Action Kermit's, you're saying that
the second mind seems to bring in new perspectives on purpose. The third mind seems very particular about what kind of perspectives. All right. Yeah, that does seem to be kind of putting them in the downfall, and yeah, I can agree with that.
That's from Kel, by the way.
I'm sorry.
Kel's response to Action Kermit is some of the minds bring in new perspectives. The second mind seems to do it on purpose. The third mind seems very particular about which kinds of perspectives they'll allow. I'm still trying to figure out what Kermit's talking about. Are you talking about the concept that as the old guard go off, the new guard come in and they build off the prior knowledge base with a new perspective?
Yeah, it has to. Have you ever read a book of the Structure of Scientific Revolutions?
No, I haven't. Why don't you tell us about it?
No, it's a book that gets discussed in philosophy of science a lot. So when you have a breakthrough, what happens is that you have a whole lot of incremental science where people say, oh, here's an interesting extension of an idea we already had. Then they'll do a new extension until they find paradoxes and stuff that doesn't fit. And then enough of those will accumulate that they say, wait a minute, this whole idea is wrong, and then a sudden big sea change will happen. And then they'll say, we need a completely new theory to do this, and then that'll explain all the paradoxes, and then we go forward from there. So part of that process, though, is that the people who held the old theories, they have a lot of respect and a lot of influence in the community, but they also have to retire at some point. So the new people who are looking at it with fresh eyes can advance, by having those epiphanies and then, changing what the dominant theory is. And my concern with the minds is that the minds are a single gestalt. They're all contributing to it, but it's basically one personality with a whole bunch of different appendages that are being added to it. So it may be harder for them to completely reevaluate their perspective than it would be a group of individual people.
Kylara comments in the general chat, I think it works better for Geneva's pacing too. This is in regards to the structure of the actual chapter itself. I think it works better for Geneva's pacing too. Adding other POVs in between adds a sense of time to her events. It separates them better than just 2 weeks later. Okay. Anyone else got a reaction or comment on Action Kermit's excellent commentary? I don't have anything. I'm not absorbing what you're saying, and it's just because I feel stupid. I think I'm a little burnt out today. Did anyone?
tricky idea to wrap your head around. That book is frequently read and just as frequently misunderstood in philosophy of science.
It's any philosophy book is going to take me at least a
Yeah.
full read and a think through, because oftentimes my interpretations end up being completely wrong. I remember college philosophy where I had no fucking clue what the hell was going on half the time. And I like to talk. So I think Hell is typing something, but in the meantime,
Here, I'll start with one of the questions I have. So one of the questions I have is a really simple one, is from Mr. Europe, who asked, how does Idis enter Geneva's body now that she doesn't have an open wound? My answer to that, and I'm going to keep it general, is that there are many orifices in the human body, and all of them are probably usable by a Selphid. So that's what I'm going to go with. Anybody else have an answer to that?
volunteers being ahead.
There's also a follow-up question to that, kind of. Are ears more or less disturbing than the nose?
Okay, look.
I would say more. I would say more disturbing, just because I would rather have something go up my nose than in my ear.
So my thought process for that was they act like a little Goa'uld, where they create an incision and then heal the incision as they go back in and out, effectively repairing the skin potion-like.
And they need to stay in the torso. They're not comfortable in the head or the lower pelvic region or anywhere that has the orifices close by, because that area is less protected.
It would probably be the equivalent of what do they call, not a catheter, but the thing that they stick into you so you can poop out of it, like a colostomy aperture, or
yeah.
what do they call it?
Yeah, I thought, when I was thinking about this after I asked it, my assumption was that Pirate didn't want to write that it stabbed through her body and like healed it afterwards, because it's a lot like very traumatic description. Now that Idis is supposed to be becoming nice and like helpful and supportive, but on the other hand, leaving it up to the reader's imagination, just in my opinion, makes it a lot worse and more disturbing.
It certainly does that. So Kel was kind enough to try and explain from a much smarter perspective than mine, and says, I think he meaning Action Kermit, means the minds are often an echo chamber. If they don't have a fresh new perspective, they'll just go in circles. Is why Geneva is vital to finding a cure for the wasting. With all their medical knowledge and her Earth perspective, she can potentially create leaps forward in knowledge, but they have to let her do so. Okay. So, Dragonus, you have something to say about that? No? Alright.
Hello, can you hear me?
There we go. Go ahead.
Okay, I had myself muted twice over. They do add new perspectives, though. It's just that because they have a choice in what new perspectives they're adding, they're not really shifting. There's bias in their selection. And I think that bias is more present in some than others. Because it seems like the second has a very loose criteria and will add in anybody, and the third has a really specific criteria and is mostly just seeking to confirm its own thoughts.
So Edge Chamber asks, are the minds more of an echo chamber than a regular immortal? It seems like each mind would self-perpetuate. To answer, do you have something to say about that, Edge, or no? Okay. Okay, not in voice. Got it. So, to answer your question from my perspective, I think that's precisely what it's being represented as. My interpretation of how the second mind spoke of the third was that the third mind constantly, like the very way they create themselves, favors the creation of consensus. Consensus leads to echo chambers lead to a kind of perpetual self-involvement and what's the word? Arrogance, I think, that they know best because they know the most, and just the exact attitude of the third mind. But we're gonna move on for this question. You got another one, Dado?
Yeah, so the next question I have is from Mr. Europe as well. The third mind is analytical and selfish. Sixth mind is of no compromise with regards to living bodies, and the second mind is nice and apathetic. What do you think the other personalities are like? So, from what we were told, third mind is dedicated to the wasting. The second mind is what dedicated to like what's that, culture, like passion, like some sort of in that realm. What was, did we get an answer? I know one of them was for like strategy. I don't know if we got a
Okay.
number on what the minds were.
So here's how the breakdown was during the chapter, because I was asked this in Pan Chat, and I looked back over the chapter. The first mind effectively looks at threats to the world and Selphid society as a whole. That's the strategist. They're looking at events occurring with Wistrom, with the arrival of the Earthers, with all these variations and particular aspects. The second mind looks forward, outward, looking at social and cultural changes and what the travelers and essentially new things that are cropping up and how to benefit their society, like selling song crystals. The third mind is focused on internal affairs, and clearly the biggest internal affair for the third mind is the wasting, and they've decided to focus exclusively on that wasting aspect. Whereas the sixth mind, we didn't find anything out about the purpose of the sixth mind other than the fact that the sixth mind is likely, because of the impression given and their hard stance on Selphid inhabiting living bodies, they're likely a sort of watchman, historian, someone whose purpose is to prevent the repetition of mistakes. But and in between them stood the fourth and fifth mind, where we didn't get any details about their purpose, but they were swayable. Remember the scenes at the end, and the impression the second mind gave is that they were the ones that the other minds had to convince to work with with Geneva. Having clarified that, does anyone want to speak about the minds as a whole, and or talk about the question?
Mr. Europe here. I was hoping that I'm still hoping that the first mind has a like patriarchal grandfatherly personality.
Is that what you imagined the voice was
Yes.
like? Because I imagined it more like not Obama. What's the most authoritative voice I can think of?
Morgan Freeman?
No, we're not talking. Morgan Freeman. Fine. You sound like Morgan Freeman. There you go.
I mean, if I had to pick an authoritative, scientific, and judging by the reference pool voice, my immediate thought would be like, oh my god, I just forgot his name. Neil deGrasse Tyson.
David Attenborough. That's the voice I would.
That's
No,
a good one.
no, I'm picking Arnold Schwarzenegger. I don't care.
Comment in the general chat what you think the voices of the minds would be, considering their purely mental constructs.
All right.
What would it be for you?
For the next, moving on to the next question, when people put what they think. From Asteria, based on what we saw of the Doctor's last mental defense, any new theories or speculation on what's keeping the natives of Inworld from processing that the gods are no longer dead? I think it's just, I don't know, it might be just the system itself. I think it might be the system that does it, because so far we've seen everyone in the system. That's just my theory. There's not too much evidence like to point that that's the case. I think the minds are better at processing it, because Geneva said that the second mind recovered from that, but when we saw what happened, or we heard what happened to Photep, he was knocked out, I believe, for, I don't know if it was hours or a day, when they tried telling him that the gods were alive. So it just might be because they're a collective. I don't honestly know. It could be Fey magic. We have no clue. Does anybody have any other perspectives that they think that could be the reason?
I do.
Dragonus here, say that.
I think, well, first off, it's unclear to me if the mines even remembered what they saw there. Because it's mentioned that the second recovered, but it also seemed like when the third saw it through the door and recoiled back, it couldn't hit the door again because it was a line that could not easily be crossed according to the narrative. And I think it's a bit interesting that way, that it might be something I think beyond even the system. It's every person we've seen is either somehow immortal enough to not die, like
Terriarch.
yeah, well, I mean, Terriarch probably just already knew because he might just be that old. He's used their names and everything, but when Palt went to just read one of the names, he had a heart attack and almost died.
That's true. He
Well, it
did. But he
wasn't
didn't
the
die.
name, though. It was
He
the term
almost
God.
died.
Yeah,
He
Yeah, it was
breathing.
just the term. Imagine
Like,
what would happen
Kamarov
if they
was
read their
refilled
name.
fine.
Also,
He'd probably
remember,
die.
there are other people who are alive who read the name off the cell phone messages, like the lady from Palace who was,
Sulcus.
yeah, Salkus.
The Raider.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
Raider.
I didn't think that maybe it was specifically lethal, but it did seem to almost kill him. Like, he wasn't breathing and everything. Like, they had to wake him back up.
I imagine it. This is Courier. I imagine it's like heavily based off of how the term is said, and mind diving into someone and getting that in your face isn't something that can just be, nulled and forgotten about. Like hearing someone say, "Oh my God," like there's a huge difference in magnitude of the concept.
It could also be because it seems like when Pelt was, or when was it? No, when Pelt was trying to look at the word, he kept trying to, was the ring, right? He kept trying to get the ring to say more, and he said he couldn't like do it almost no matter what. It was like everything was stopping him from trying to reveal the name. It might be that after the gods died, it might be that the world, or like however the world's magic works, because we've seen that magic's alive and that the world also sometimes seems alive. It could be that the world itself is trying to wipe the memory of the gods from in-world, and the only reason that it was more readable from the text was because it was something new, and that maybe the magic couldn't counteract it.
Okay, we got a couple of people wanting to talk and a few comments before that. So here's our suggestions from folks on the Voices of the Minds. Kel went with Walter Cronkite and Carl Sagan. I don't know who that is. Who the hell is Carl Sagan?
I know Carl Sagan
Oh
is.
my
Carl
god!
Sagan? Jesus. Man.
Oh,
Michael
Lord,
Wood,
Oshi.
the historian. Owen Wilson. Owen Wilson's a good one. For the Second Mind. There is Dan Rather from Lynette, of course. Dan Rather would do pretty well. I was thinking about it. You know whose voice I would like? There's a guy who, there's this black man who does all of these insurance commercials. I can never remember his name.
I know who you're talking about.
Oh my god! I think I have an orgasm every time he speaks.
Okay,
But,
okay,
yeah.
whoa. It's okay.
Whoa.
Okay, but it's just. But we're gonna go.
Well,
we're
we're keeping
moving
that
on.
in.
Just as a
No, I would.
reminder, for people who are talking, this is all recorded and Pirate will be listening to it later. So
Yeah, I don't
Yes.
care. I am the
I know
same.
you don't, but the
Yeah.
rest of us, everybody came in late, so the recording's already started. Just so you know.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Another person, real quick, would be Christopher Walken.
Christopher Walken, yeah. So we have Jake and Pat who would like to speak, and then Kel said it wasn't the name, it was the GD part of the coin, meaning that it wasn't the name itself. I think it was the actual
Word
part
God.
where it's God, the word God. Yes. Okay, Jake, you want to speak?
Something I remembered from with the whole God discussion is about last volume during one of the Slice of Life chapters where Pawn was making his like Bible and everything. he was talking with Lynette about gods and stuff, and like at one point it seemed like Lynette just could not physically process that information. It like went in and went out, and she never recognized. So like maybe it does matter about the intent, because with Pelt, Erin said someone gave it to her, so he made that connection, which caused him to almost die. But with Lynette, it was just a mere passing of information. You're one in and out. And it seems like the Antinium as a whole just aren't affected by this phenomenon. They talk about it like it's nothing. They're fine. Even
They,
new ones.
yeah, they do. Pat, you wanted to speak up?
Yes. So I don't have a lot of substantive evidence for this, but I think it's witches. I think they did something and it has prevented people from thinking about the gods.
You think at the core of this interdiction that affects every single person in world
Yes,
is
actually, I agree
a
with
witch
this.
thing?
I can see
Okay.
that perfectly. That might even be related to the death of or the waning of magic. That the witches and a bunch of other people casted such this OP spell that it just affected everything else in the outcome.
Okay.
Yeah, it's mostly just because we know they opposed the gods in the past, and it just seems like something a lot of really powerful old witches would be able to do. You know, if you get everyone together and kind of do a big thing.
It would fit into the idea that this is one of the few things that could avoid being affected by the system itself, since the essence of witchcraft is emotion and intent as much as anything else, and it affects and it is without the system itself. Okay, so do we have more questions, Dado? Does
Yes,
anyone
we
have any
do.
questions?
So I'm just gonna go on the next question. So, another from Asteria. How, if at all, has your opinion of the Doctor's motivation and character changed based on this chapter? Does anybody have any opinions on their change of opinion of Geneva?
I don't think anything has affected my opinion on Geneva. Geneva, I talk about this before. Geneva, her whole storyline was decided the moment she was injured, and she accepted the Selphid into her body to function. And you realized the choice. Actually, no, even before that, the choice to be in a battlefield and healing people, even though she knew she could be harmed. After that, everything that played out is, to me at least, some version of like consequence of what choice she made, and that's just her. That is her entire being. Okay, we're gonna go
Mr.
Lynette
Europe? No,
and
Mr.
Mr.
No,
Europe.
no,
I
Mr.
know.
Europe.
We're gonna do it the other way around though. Lynette, then Mr. Europe.
No, he was first.
Okay, go ahead then.
Favoritism up in here.
Well, I'm trying to change up who gets to talk first, okay?
Yeah, I've talked about how I really like how it seems that Geneva is going to get some agency, but with the Selphid still in her, so to speak. I really like the idea that she keeps the symbiosis relationship going, but obviously without being a prisoner in her own body. And I think, I think it's great that they're not just healing her, so to speak, and fixing it that way, because I think that's a waste of a very unique character opportunity.
Okay, Lynette, you're
My impressions of Geneva changing hasn't been about her personality specifically, although I do think she's grown in the ways that the others have mentioned already. But her dealing with the Selphids, the way she dealt with Okasha was compromise and kind of a negotiation. The way by the time she got to Idis, she was full on trying to do the passive aggressive manipulation, potential Stockholm syndrome kind of thing, but she was doing it on purpose. And with the mind, she's realized that's not going to work because they can see everything she thinks. So her responses to the Selphids have changed based on her understanding of what they can do to her.
All right. The next. So Edge Dancer had a reaction. They said, I would just like to comment on the growth of Geneva from her first appearance to now. She has much less of a savior complex and is now acknowledging importance of her own well-being. Alabaster then said, I just second the notion that her motives didn't change, but her acceptance and mentality towards the situation did. And then Dragonus, you wanted to react?
I did. The thing that I've noticed most about Geneva is she's never exactly been something of a pushover, but she's also never really been, I felt, very good at being really aggressively assertive, especially at the idea of maybe needing to harm others. And this chapter, she even says it specifically that, like, the Hippocratic Oath doesn't mean she needs to be a pushover, and she can start fighting dirty and using some of these crazy mental tricks, but just in general not being held hostage by her own good nature anymore.
Can I ask a question about how people thought about... Okay, so Pirate did a scene construction where the climax of the scene with the second mind, not even with, sorry, with the third mind, was Geneva's declaration that the Hippocratic Oath meant that she would heal others, but that she wasn't a pushover. And did that hit you emotionally, like from a reader perspective? How did that hit you? Did it feel as strong as you think it should have hit? What did you think about how the entire storyline led up to that moment? I know we had the meme joke and everything, but just that sense of, like, her sense of self being represented. What did you think? Was it done
For
well? Did I do a good
for,
job?
for me, for that specific part about her bringing up the Hippocratic Oath, I didn't feel too much of an emotional attachment to her saying that, only because I remember her bringing that up a lot, and that's usually what she says to people, so it didn't sound anything like she normally wouldn't say. So it just wasn't that surprising. I was like, in my head, I was like, oh, Geneva's probably going to say, I have the Hippocratic Oath. I was just expecting that, which she did kind of repeat throughout the chapter. But I mean, that's just that's true. That's what she follows. That's her thing that she took responsibility towards. And I think it was pointed in a previous chapter that I think if Geneva doesn't adhere to it, that she'll lose the class. I believe. I might be wrong, but I know there are certain classes that have rules where if you don't follow them, you can lose the class.
Like the druids. I was
Yes.
going to ask, as a corollary to that question, why has Geneva not received a skill to help her function with that oath? Because of that oath, she genuinely believes in it. It gives her power. Why was there not some kind of reaction from the system to reinforce that ability?
Be,
Because we've seen other oaths similar to that get skills, right?
Well, yes, but but I don't think she necessarily needs it because the system often gives you skills to things you might want or need, or that it thinks you need, and I don't think it needed to give her anything in regards to enforcing her Hippocratic Oath because, I mean, it worked out. She didn't need the skill to get it. She got something else instead. So the system just doesn't see it as needing to give a skill for it. Probably. That's my impression.
Okay.
Does anybody else have any other thoughts? No?
No. Let's.
Actually,
Are you
considering...
speaking?
Sorry, this is Courier.
There you go.
Considering murder has been shown to be like a white and a red class, depending on the person and how they react to it, I think her being committed to it is enough for it to go badly quickly if she were to seriously compromise her stance on that oath. And that's about it.
I could agree with that. I think, because we've seen a lot of cases they differ, but I think because Doctor, I mean, she didn't get it as a green class or anything, so it means it wasn't new. But as a doctor and her basically being the primary one that everyone knows, I think that the system might base it around Geneva if more people start getting the nurse and the doctor class, because we do see other people that were training under her. Okay, I see people responding.
I imagine the system is still trying to process how to handle her oath with her class. Doctor isn't new, but her stance on being one, while maybe also not new, is a little complex.
Yeah, so
especially
no,
in relation to everyone else.
Yeah, so I see what Jake said. She didn't make the class. I understand that. I'm saying that she didn't make the class, but she's one of the few people it seems like who has that class and does well with it. And also, she's very well known. And we've also seen a lot of classes are based on culture. If people think of when they think of Doctor and they think of Geneva, the system just might base a lot of it around her. So it might be a common thing where if you don't follow the Hippocratic Oath, you might not get the Doctor class because that's what everybody associates with the Doctor.
So, a couple of things. Dragonus is frantically posting that the Hippocratic Oath is ancient and from Greece, and thus likely has cultural significance. I think that's what he's going for. And that he agrees with me, and that Geneva should gain a benefit from holding so closely to the oath as well. The idea of it, Dragonus says, the idea of it absolutely could have come over when Latin came over. The Latin came over when Niers found it. That is true.
It's possible.
No,
Hold on, Lynette
it
has
isn't.
something. Go ahead.
Don't the demons chant before battle in Latin?
Dragonus?
I think they do, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about that when Niers gets to the bottom of that dungeon and has said that, like, amongst the things he found was stuff in Latin, we know chess came over at some point. The Hippocratic Oath is old enough that people brought in beforehand absolutely could have brought it over with the concept of Doctor, since we know Doctor isn't a new class. And yeah, it's Oshi. I do agree with you. The system rewards challenge, and the system rewards adversity and holding to the Hippocratic Oath in such dire circumstances.
I could not believe at the end of the chapter, Pirate didn't go, the reason that Geneva is able to find a way to protect herself is that she receives a skill from the system that effectively makes the minds unable to manipulate her. Because so long as she holds the oath, she cannot be, like, broken. But I guess in the same way, it sort of
That's like a level 50 skill. That sounds like a level.
I don't think it should be a level 50 skill. I think it should be one of the few things that come early, because holding to the oath itself is a challenge.
I
It is.
agree, but the system, like, that sounds like such an OP thing because there's so many people. You know, the in world shows that low level people are weak and that high level people are strong, and it just sounds so like individually OP because, I mean, there are like basically Geneva is the equivalent of a pacifist, and like during war, you're not allowed to attack like certain groups of pacifists, like chaplains and stuff like that. That's
cut out there now.
I'm sorry. During wartime, you're not allowed to attack people that are like chaplains. Chaplains are not allowed to have weapons, because of that. So I could see why you would think that, but you could still technically attack and kill a chaplain. You would just be attacked by almost a lot of other people because of it. It's not like you could still do it, but I could see her getting a skill like that later on, a high level skill that would dissuade or heavily like dissuade people from attacking her because of the Hippocratic Oath. I could see that, but to learn it at such a low level, I think that's too strong.
I don't. She isn't low level, is she? I was told that level 30 is now high level, and she's definitely past that at this point. But,
Yes, but
Lynette had a question. Something.
yeah, go.
Level 34 last we saw.
She was level 34 last we saw, and apparently that's high level now. So, Lynette.
My question was going to be in a completely different direction. I don't know where.
Go ahead. We're ready to move on from talking about Geneva. Let's talk about
Yeah.
Fraerlings and hot Luan. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. My question, I was talking about this earlier today in Patreon spoilers, and I had mentioned how I have an opinion that Umina is a plant. And there's a couple of things that have happened in the past that led me to believe this. I didn't realize that a lot of other people did not know what I was talking about for that, so I didn't know if I should bring that up tonight or not. Am I alone in this theory that
What made
I've never
you
heard of
think?
this theory.
Hang on. What makes you think she's a plot? Lay it out for us. Lay it out. For us.
Yes, please do.
Okay, so I have two instances that I'm basing this off of. The first of which happened in class with the professor. The second of which happened at the games. The first instance was when she brought the porcupine quills, or I don't remember what animal it was specifically. It wasn't a porcupine, but they were like that. And she lays them down and she details about how this was an important threat because this group of dangerous little tiny animals was getting close to a Fraerling village. And I noticed when I read the chapter the first time around that the Titan sharply looked at her when she said that, but he didn't actually harp on it at all. And it wasn't until many millions of words later that we realized that she's not supposed to know where the villages are. She put herself on a list whenever she told the Titan to his face that she did know where one was and was actively hunting for a threat to it in order to impress her professor. I'm hoping that that village wasn't Ouroboros, because if it was, then she may have killed 500,000 people just because she knew about them. The second instance was the games, when she and Luan are hiding behind a building while waiting for some of the soldiers.
Your theory is that because she demonstrated knowledge that she's not supposed to have, one, and two, and she did it openly in class in front of Nears, who's she's supposed to be supposedly a plant for, and two, she talks about being from Talonquil. Is that it?
I don't know that she's from Talonquil. She said
Wait,
that's my, and
wait,
I
wait.
don't.
So I'm sorry to interrupt because the audio cut out for me. Can you say again? So I got the part where you said that her and Luan were fighting behind something.
They were at the games,
Mhm.
and Luan was saying that he was from Talonquil, and she brightened up and said, "Oh, Talonquil, that's my," and then she got interrupted.
Okay.
So I don't know where exactly she's from. I don't think we ever actually find out, but those two instances make me think that she's, plus the fact that she's a lizard person, which I hate to say, and I do like the girl. I will be very disappointed if she's actually, you know, one
From
of the
Jungle
reasons.
Tales?
Yes, but if you think about it, all all of the great companies have spies and infiltrators. Nears cannot detect them because that's not what his skills are for. But if you have one in the serving staff, which we did, it makes sense to put as many others in as many other different places so that when an opportunity arrives, it can be taken advantage of. And putting one among the students absolutely makes sense to me.
Absolutely, I agree with you. The only problem for me is why would she give herself away?
I don't know.
She deliberately revealed that she has knowledge of the location of a Fraerling village, or at least actively looked for open knowledge of Fraerling villages. I think the sharp look was because she was smart. I remember reading the scene and exactly what you're talking about. So the way the scene is structured, it's after that comment, but he gives her a sharp look because she surprised him. And that's the common theme for Umina and Nears. Umina always surprises him because she thinks about things differently than a lot of the other things. And she's not, as Near said, she's not someone special or something. You didn't see anything special about her, but she surprised him. And I think that was more pirate signaling to us that this is who's going to win the Darkwing games, because here's a person who can surprise Nears. Dragoness has very loud opinions. Go ahead, Dragoness.
I don't know if I have loud opinions. I think the village thing might be an issue of early installment weirdness, which, does happen, and that maybe the term and the concept wasn't as fleshed out. But even then, there's probably a decent number of actual small Fraerling villages in outskirts of civilized areas, so that there is some Fraerling presence for some amount of trade, and just to keep up appearances. And it could very easily just have been one of those. I just feel like there's not enough supporting evidence underneath that for me to really think about it.
Yeah, she was trying to curry his favor and brag about what she knew, which is absolutely something that you would do if you weren't a professional spy. So, haha, see, I'm not a professional spy. Ta-da! So I fooled you, right?
Maybe they intentionally gave them the most incompetent plant just so he would have low expectations.
I just don't know how, I get that his skills and his talents don't lean specifically towards finding a plant, but let's face it, this is the advanced class. Nears interact with these people more than any others, and I can only imagine that they have been vetted.
Okay.
I just don't see it.
So, Mr. Europe has an opinion. Before you go, Mr. Europe, so Alabaster says, I agree that something is very much off about her. That said, both of her blunders were things that she definitely should have caught, especially talking to Nears' face. I think she's hiding something, but not that she's working against Nears. Go ahead, Mr. Europe.
I think it's possible that she's an unwitting spy, maybe, but as I'm thinking about it, she does often, she keeps trying to dig into Near's history, or dig into Near's personality, because she's so interested in him and teacher's pet. And she specifically used her question to try to ask things that would bother him to answer, and that takes a very not quite sinister but troubling light when if you see it from this theory.
And when she didn't get it, she also asked the question she did get answered was something that yet another company would not want her to know. So maybe I don't know. I mean, the thing that worries me now is that when the Fraerlings now have contacted the 4 students, and Cottam is going, okay, I need your help. I'm worried that he's now approaching someone that he absolutely should not, and that Peclear is going to give homework to Umina in order to find out more about what's going on in Talonqual, and she might not have a choice about getting it.
Okay. There's the other aspect. Wait, hold on. Sorry. Kel said something. She's also admitted to Marion that she has or had a huge crush on Nears. But I also really like Umina and don't want her to turn out to be working for evil. Okay. All right. And Alabaster comments, also, Umina was working close to Foliana, whose skill set is exactly suited to finding plants. If she is a plant, Foliana knows and is keeping it hidden. No, Lynette, that was actually, I think Lynette's right.
Alabaster was the one who said it. So yeah, I think it was Marion.
I think it was Marion. Okay, so
next, can we go? I need to move on. Next question.
One comment before we move on. So my problem with any of the students being spies for anybody else, they're too dumb. They're just.
But that's not bad in some cases.
No, let me finish. So they spent the amount of things that they do that present them as college students with no fucking clue what the hell they're doing, including waiting 2 months and doing nothing in a place that the Titan literally said, there's something interesting here that I saw that you should be finding, and you should. They could. I'm not going to get into it, but I had a very serious reaction to the self-absorbed stupidity. There's no other way. Stupidity, slowness, cautiousness, hesitation, inability to look beyond, look and take risks, whatever you want to call it, of them. And I don't for a second believe that even a badly trained spy would be like that. They might.
I was just gonna say she might not even be a spy that was trained. She might just be unknowing itself that she is a plant. Her family might have connections to Jungle Tales, and she could be sent there. She could have something on her that just records audio of some sort or transmit.
Okay.
That's all I wondered was whether or not I was alone in what I was thinking.
I can agree with that.
I'm putting
Not
it to
anymore.
everybody.
Yeah.
So thank you very much.
Let's move on because we have like 2 or 3-ish big things, and then we have like 2 lightning questions. So this one from Asir: with the addition of psionics as a power separate to magic, does this open the door to other fantasy ways of achieving power, such as I always forget how to say this. What's the Chinese genre of magic? It starts with an X.
Cultivation.
Yes, but how is it pronounced? The Zhanxia? That.
Yeah.
Zhanxia, not being connected to magic at all. I believe Drath had references to its cultivators before, but assumed it was just another type of magic, like box magic be true magic. I don't understand that part. But from my interpretation of it, and from what we saw of Ken and Drath, my current hypothesis is that, we've seen cases, heroes, this is not the first case where heroes have been summoned, obviously. I think Drath is people that were summoned from Earth, and instead of, because from what we've seen, a lot of the Earthers, at least a good amount of them in the beginning, were more American or, Western centralized. That's why we see a lot of, comparisons with medieval. I think Drath, instead of pulling Earthers from Europe or other adjacent, they pulled from China or other Asian countries and cultures, and that's why Drath instead has different outlook. In our world, none of the cultivation stuff is real and all that, but when they got pulled into in-world, the system might have accommodated that, and that's why there's a different type of development. That's my opinion. I don't know if anybody has any opinions on this or Drath and cultivation as a whole in world.
No, I got nothing. Anyone?
Yeah, it's kind of a broad thing that we don't have too much reference
I don't
on.
think we
I
can
only
dig
want
into
to say
this.
that I want to know more.
It's just there's just not enough information for me to feel like there's something to speculate on. I'm happy to speculate about the application of psionics.
Yes.
And the fact that there's so few the Selphid minds consider it a secret, where the other psychics, so DM Craft or Rat to me said something last night when we were having a kiki about this, and he said, what if there were psychics before, and the cycle started with psychics, and psychics had turned into or enslaved or created the Selphid psychics, and then the Selphid psychics wiped out the original psychics, and then went on a rampage around the world, and then they got killed by psychics who came up, and then the survivors of the eventual failure of their attempt killed all the psychics that over.
This
cycle
is
of killing.
What the heck? I don't even know what's happening now.
So essentially, there is a thing in the guest book that talks about how the Selphids were originally servants to an archmage. So I always wondered if the Selphids were created to have psychic abilities, and the reason you don't see more psychics around is because the minds have methodically killed all of them and left themselves the only ones with psychic abilities, sans the crawlers.
I could see that, but it sounds like a lot. But yeah, it'd just be speculation. I also with psionics, I just want to know how like in depth this is in the class and the skills. Like, is it like a trait? Because we saw that before when we saw Guardian Rest, who's a psychic guardian. Before it was revealed that there was the telepathic, like psychic parts of classes, his just said guardian. And I assume that was Idris appraising or looking at him. I don't know. Is it hidden like Pawn's class until you know about it? Like, I don't understand how that works. But yeah. Who said so? Oh, Edge Dancer replied to the
For anyone who wants to know,
cultivation.
DM. For anyone who wants to know, DM Craft just posted his cycle idea of how psychics begat Selphids plus psychics that begat Selphid rebels that begat Selphid eliminates all psychic people and then begat the Selphid Empire, then the downfall of the Empire, and then all that's left is psychic Selphids at the end of the cycle. It's it's a super cool theory, and I'm really, really attracted to it, and I really, really hope that there is an empath class somewhere along the way. Moving on, what else we got?
We have, well, I mean, Edge Dancer said one part about it, which was cultivation has roots in very different mythology. Looks like we have here of Drath as known alchemy and body refining, which is from other variants of cultivation. Could go into more, but hard to type out. Yeah, there's a lot for cultivation. Yeah. It's a very big thing.
Cultivation's a lot. I have a difficulty like thinking Pirate has dipped into it unless they dip into it, you know.
Another thing, which was the next question, which was, will Luan take more land deliveries, and can his skull take the beating of continued misuse if he does? Also, if he does end up doing land deliveries, what are the odds that Luan gets a skill eventually and makes him and his skull treat the land if he's rowing on water than land? So, from what I understand, his isn't his class technically not associated specifically with water, it's Olympian, so doesn't that encompass everything in like Olympic sports? I thought that was his class was Olympic.
Look, an Olympic. Go ahead. The Olympic level, say heavyweight lifter versus an Olympic level.
No, I understand. There's a difference between the two. What are his classes?
He has athlete and rower. Those are his two classes. He does not.
Well, he has more than that. But
no,
yeah,
that's his two. What other classes?
Those are the two that are in relation to his working right now. Yes.
What are the other classes he has? I don't remember.
Soldier and medic.
Oh, I see. And those have not consolidated with anything else, right?
Not as far as the appraisal spell when he was inside Payeth. No.
He doesn't have swimmer anymore because he gained the athlete class and it absorbed the swimmer class.
But athlete is not specifically
and enhanced durability oars.
Athlete in and of itself is not specific. Now he has the rower class, but it's not specific to rowing. I could see him upgrading. I thought he had Olympian because now his courier name is Luan the Olympian.
Is it? Who the hell said that?
That's what pirates.
Pirate.
Well, it's in the chapter. It says that's his courier name. It says they call him Luan the Olympian. I thought he consolidated or something.
No, DM Craft posted all of his the wiki's list of classes for him. It's expert rower, athlete, medic, and soldier. So he's not leveling medic or soldier. Expert rower is maintained, and athlete is the class he gained when he nearly died at sea.
Okay.
Yeah, his swimmer consolidated.
Okay. Could we see him though later on upgrade into rowing on land? And how bad of really?
No,
but that would be awesome.
That would be no, it wouldn't. It would be
it would.
It'd be awesome.
You know what? I'm just gonna.
It'd be like a Minecraft character.
Stop.
It'd be simpler for him to just row through the air.
You're just a hater.
Fine, I'm a hater.
You're a Luan hater.
We're gonna put levitation.
He can row through clouds.
We're gonna put levitation on the boat, and he can go anywhere he wants.
He could row through. He could row through lava.
And the boats you rode in on. Come on.
Luan, I believe Luan is going to be the first person to go into the edge of the world and live. At the end of the. There you
go. Okay, I have a list of questions. Am I allowed to ask them now? And they're all about Fraerlings.
Well, let me do the lightning questions too, because these are more
okay.
little small things. So, Gunman Dude, what's the most cancerous earworm / meme that Geneva could have used?
Oh no, I refuse to
Any cat
engage
meme,
with this
any cat
conversation.
meme, any cat meme.
Baby shark. I'm getting from
Oh
Edge
God,
Dancer.
yeah.
Oh my god, no. The only terrible. It's not a meme, but
Charlie
there is
bit my
one thing that
finger.
Numa Numa.
Oh,
Numa,
Numa Numa, I love
Numa.
that song. Oh, Nyan
There
Cat.
is the worst thing ever pre-meme, but got reborn. Remember the Small World song?
Oh, I love that song.
Imagine it playing over and over for 100
It's
years.
a small world
After all, it's a small world after all.
Should the UN be renamed to Geneva School for Gifted Youngsters?
No.
I could. That's funny.
Okay, you know what? That was probably from Blues.
Blue. It was from Blue Juice.
Yeah. So it's not just Blues. Everybody literally immediately and instantaneously said that Geneva has become Mr. X. No, people. No.
She
never
is.
even thought that. What are you talking
She is
about?
Mr. X. What do you mean? Or Professor
Like,
X.
It's Jean Grey.
So many people went Jean Grey or Mr. X. I was like, no, stop it. The Phoenix is not in this. For one thing, Geneva has brains.
Wow.
What? Fight
me. Okay. Well, aside from that, I have a question. Like, and I mentioned it earlier when I was talking about my impressions for the SCP. You know, Pirate takes some stuff from that occasionally. Do you think that we might also get later on, or some equivalent of memetics? Like, actually, because I don't know if you guys are familiar with SCP, but memes are a thing, and they can sometimes be lethal. Where, and you know, kind of like the recognition of the gods are alive, is that simply seeing a certain image that's crafted almost like an art can give you negative effects.
I can see that happening, especially because of the way I know Pirate is a lover of SCP, but I don't see any indication that it's there now. But we'll see. I mean, it's a good speculation, a supposition that Pirate might lean into it, but who knows? And it is, and Courier's saying it's not a concept that's unique to SCP, so
it's not. It's true. I do think, I don't know if the minds have a defense against this, but because they're so open, I feel like any sort of mimetic effect, like I'm sure they have some sort of defense, but like I feel like if you threw someone in and they went into their mind and there was like an insanity spell, I don't know how that would affect them as a whole. I could see that actually injuring them in some capacity, like mentally. Anything like that, like a cognito hazard.
Lynette asks, how many other memes were caught throughout the chapter? I caught the Spock one. Any others?
Was Piano Cat in there? I couldn't remember.
No.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
No. Pirate isn't, like, Pirate had some memes, old and new, but yeah. Can I talk about the Fraerlings? I want to talk about the Fraerlings!
Yeah, there was a question about the Fraerlings already in there. As I don't know if this relates to yours, but same question that's always brought up every time we get info about a race. Based on the name and name of their homeland, are the Fraerlings actually Fae or Lost Elves? Every time we get a new race, this is what we talk about.
Just don't ever ask that question. Don't ever ask that question. Short answer, no. Okay, so the Fraerlings didn't just... There are three things that get revealed about the Fraerlings that need to be discussed immediately. First, at the end, the fact that the Fraerlings as a whole, it isn't one group of Fraerlings allied with the company, it's the Fraerlings as a whole that are being hunted. And they're being hunted to, like, and there's clearly multiple nations and multiple groups, and Pace is not the only place that's being hunted. The fact that it's happening means that there's possibly a actual xenocidal attempt being done here to destroy all of the Fraerlings, and that's big. That is big. Why would they go to such extreme lengths? And the only thing I can think of is Niers, but Niers was supposed to be dead. If Niers was supposed to be dead, and the company and the people actively went against the Fraerlings, what the fuck is going on there? where is this coming from? And if the word signum comes out of any of you guys, no. Pirate will not distract me with signum. Go ahead, Mr. Europe.
No, I just already typed it in before you said that.
Oh,
I have a reaction.
Go ahead, Lynette.
Going back to the previous chapter where Peclear was talking, and Fezemet says that the Forgotten Wing is for Fraerling and Beastkin. Well, obviously that's only partly true, but when you look at it, all four of the great companies are rather race specific. You've got the Gazers, you've got the Doulahans, you've got the Centaurs, and then the Forgotten Wing is kind of weird because they've got Selphids and they've got Fraerlings and they've got Beastkin and they've also got Doulahan and Centaurs in there too, and they're a little odd. But the Fezemet didn't think that. Fezemet thinks that if it's a company-based thing, just like everybody else, then all Fraerlings automatically belong to that company, which means that it doesn't matter if they're under Nears' aegis or not. They're going to get attacked because obviously they would side with the Forgotten Wing if they could.
Okay, that's a good reason.
I do agree. Yeah, so I think the only reason that a lot of the bigger companies that are race specific, because there's a lot of companies. There's just the big ones that are the ones that we mainly talk about, but I don't think Grave Tenders was race specific or anything like that. A lot of the smaller companies are mixed with whatever. The reason the bigger companies are race specific is because they're backed by the races, like people or government, it seems like.
The totality of
yes,
a group.
yes. So the only reason the Forgotten Wings, the reason they're so good is because they had a bunch of money from being adventurers prior to being a company, so they were able to support themselves.
Hang on, we don't actually know how the Forgotten Wings rose up, and actually
I thought
we
it was
do.
talked about.
I should take that back. We do know because it's explicitly said that Foliana and Nears are the pillars on which the entire Forgotten Wing company is built. And the idea has always been that if they could topple those two pillars, then the company itself would shatter and somebody else could take their place. Lynette, you had something?
I'm sorry, I forgot that I wasn't supposed to talk anymore. Rat just posted something that was a quote. It says, "That was the Circle of Thorns, but that was the one Aika knew. The past circles had been dangerous as the circumstances dictated. A few iterations of her group had fought back invasions from Chandrar and Baleros. They had humbled Celt when it invaded, thrown back the 6 great companies of Baleros 2,000 years back."
Ooh.
That's what I said. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's a really interesting comment, and I remain shocked by. Okay, so for the few come in about the implications of the Jungle Tales attacking all Fraerlings everywhere, regardless of association with the Forgotten Wings company, why they would do it, what would cause them to, and what benefit that they could possibly gain from it. But leaving that off, I'm trying to understand how fucking powerful. Okay, so Pirate made some change. Did any of the typo people in here, if you're in here, did Pirate change the Alchimagus? What is with this Alchimagus business?
Yeah, they did.
It's like isn't my interpretation? It's like Archmage, but for alchemy, because alchemy is magic in some ways.
Archmage.
No,
but it's an equivalent.
He's dual classed. He's got almost an equal number of levels in mage as he does in alchemy. So
okay. Violet wants to say something. Go ahead.
I remember that when Teriarch saw Grimalkin, he thought he was going to be an Archmagus of Sinew. So I think Archmagus is like the equivalent of Archmage if you don't study more magical.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, because alchemy in and of itself seems to heavily be magic. So I think Archmagus is an equivalent of, it's a variation of Archmage, but for alchemy, that's their specific study. And I know, I mean, Fraerlings are pretty cut off. They seem to be very high level compared to the other races. They probably have an Archmage or two, but they don't compare exactly
That's what
to
I was
like
gonna say. Do they
other
have
Archmages.
someone equivalent to? Yeah, do they have someone equivalent to an Archmage?
Yes, they
And
probably have a few.
or at least leveled high enough that they could potentially threat. Like, in any case, I love the little sequence where oh god, what the Alchimagus started doing appraisal spells on everyone because it revealed a kind of yes, Illachrome is the I was wondering if it was still Resk. Yes, Illachrome is the enchanter. Resk was the Archimagus, right?
Yes.
Lynette?
Yes, the Alchimagus, yes.
Yes. So Resk, the thing I enjoyed about that sequence is it reveals a level of what high. Okay, so I know the Fraerlings are kind of a limited society to look at, but if we were looking at a high level society, the kind of viewpoint they have reminds me of Terriarch, where they look at people and they say it's high level and or middling level, and it's like a level 38 commander class, and for the rest of the world it's like, what the this guy is really powerful, he controls the city. For them it's what?
Well, from the immortals or people who have like higher level, it seems like they don't really like. I know people talk about, oh, let's talk about levels. I don't think they often care as levels as much. They look more at like what the class is. Like they'll look at they like black powder engineer. Like that's very like specific. That is impressive. They look at the class itself rather than the levels. That's my interpretation because if it's a low level, you're like, well, that has time to grow. But if you see a low level person with a very good or like interesting class, you're like, oh, that person's going places. That's interesting because they have all these levels to still go.
And I loved the addition of the Encyclopedia Scout. I know we discussed his choice to reach out to them, but I'm still trying to understand why the Fraerlings decide to split up, and more importantly, why they decide to keep them apart, because it's clearly a choice on the scouts' part to reach out to these students, and clearly a choice on Pirates' part to keep them away from the company. It's okay.
What?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Well, think about it.
Only one Fraerling left. The others are still going to the UN.
No, the Fraerling is keeping the students away from the UN company by appearing and presenting them with a problem and telling them, I need your help. They will know. Umina was psyching herself up to go up to ask the UN, who the hell are you and where
This
you from?
ties into Lynette's theory again.
Yeah. Like, it's... I'm trying to understand where that part is going, but Lynette, to tie back to your theory, the Alchimagus also happened to do a very high level appraisal spell on Umina, and he did not buy classes or any kind of spy thing. And yes, he could not take the class, but that seems like a no thing to me because, yeah, there we go.
So I'm gonna put one more question, then I'll end the recording, and then we can talk about whatever. Because I saw this, I think it was talked in Pan. Was it today?
Yep. Probably.
So it was between. We're talking about the Antinium and the Selphids, and I forget who exactly. Oh, I'm sorry. So we were talking about the Antinium and the Selphids, and I forget who it was that brought it up, but they talked about how it would be a very OP combo if the Selphid started working with the Antinium, where the Antinium would build them bodies and the Selphids would inhabit the empty bodies of Antinium. Does anybody have anything on that?
That ties into the Golem thing for me.
Yeah.
I don't think I like it.
That's a very powerful way to game the system, but I'm not happy that idea exists.
Really? Why?
It just seems really skeevy.
I can see that. I don't know. I think that the Selphids and the Antinium could benefit from each other because the Antinium, one of the things they've been trying to do is repair the telepathic network, whatever they had between all of them. And the Selphids are the only other group, it seems like, that knows anything about telepathy and psychics. I don't know if they are, like, I assume that the Antinium were pretty well with, using it, employing it en masse, where it seems like the Selphids are more specialized in other areas, but not using it on all the Selphids, just some. I don't know.
Well, and then it becomes a gatekeeping kind of thing, doesn't it?
For what?
Becomes gatekeeping?
Like learning it?
Learning it or allowing others to have it, or I don't know.
I think I saw the conversation you're talking about and I commented on it as well. And my theory was that technically it's possible for the queens, if the queens reached out to the Selphids and the queens sort of agreed to work with each other, the queens could create Antinium bodies and Antinium minds that are willing to take in Selphids, and they could create a biological symbiont between the two races. Between the two species. But here's my typical reaction to anybody who mentions the Antinium being taken over by Selphids. The Antinium spent their formative years fighting Sleepy, and Sleepy created the Krellers, and the Krellers literally crawl into every single space and eat every single thing. They would have biological defenses against any kind of parasitism. So it's highly unlikely.
But the current Antinium aren't like that. The resources for the current iteration of Antinium are lacking compared to the older Antinium. They're not the same.
The current Antinium copy over the best of the designs that they could preserve, and those designs would inherently have defenses like against poison and against they can't innovate past those designs, and those designs were built to fight against the kind of depredations. It's one of the reasons why they're so good against Krellers, right? Yeah. Krisenberg was biting Krellers. Like, he can avoid the risks of parasitism because of it. He's not afraid of this.
I do think the Antinium are susceptible to the Selphids, and I only say this because, and we were talking about this in Pan as well, where, I thought it was weird because Jalakwa, when she talked about the Raskar, she was so excited to be one of the first, possibly the first Selphid to take over a Raskar body. But then earlier when she talks about the Antinium, and I know at the time it was for the dungeon, but she didn't seem excited of possibly taking it over. Even though it was offered, she was more worried. She's like, well, I don't know if I'll have enough time to do that. So it seems like the Selphids have done it in the past, maybe when everyone was at war with the Antinium. Maybe they took over some of the Antinium bodies. It doesn't, I wouldn't put it past them.
I don't know about it, but yeah, you know what? It could remotely be possible. But let's wrap it up here.
Yep.
That's
what are we supposed to do for the wrap up? What am I supposed to say?
So thanks for coming, listening in, everybody who's listening in on YouTube. Dotto will post this with timestamps, and we'll check over the audio and should have it up by Monday morning. Monday being November 15th. It should.
I'll probably have it up by
Tuesday.
Well, no, the day before the new chapter. Yeah, Tuesday, because I have classes. But yeah.
Yeah. Tuesday. Well, the public release of the chapter, which will be Tuesday, because we can't release before that anyway. Yeah. I'm sorry. You're right. When the public release comes out. So thanks for coming. Just shut the recording off.
All right, I will. I'll cut it.
You're gonna have to do a